Good afternoon to everybody. We are in the days of the month of Adar, getting ready for the month of Nisan. As we know, this Shabbos is Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the first of the month of Nisan, and we're reading three Sefer Torah, the Sefer Torah for Shabbos, Torah for Rosh Chodesh, and the Torah for Achodesh Hazeh Lochem. As this Shabbat, we're starting to read about the first mitzvah Hashem gives Am Yisrael. The mitzvah was the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh. And there we start learning about the idea of Hashem bringing Makat Bechorot, the last and the most harsh plague, on the Egyptians and Pharaoh specific. And the Eden, the Jews are going out of Mitzrayim. So this is how we're getting in now to this month, to the month of redemption, the month of Geula. And there's always the question being asked, why was Pharaoh punished so severe? Many explanations, many ideas. Hashem wanted to take out the Jews of Mitzrayim, but why was he punished so severe? One of the explanations, one of the ideas is we are being told, we learn, is that Pharaoh had a person, he was a person called Kefui Tova. Kefui Tova means there is the idea of Akarata Tov, and the opposite is Kefui Tova. Akarata Tov means when somebody does good to you, you acknowledge, you recognize the good the person does to you. That's called Akarata Tov, to acknowledge the good that someone does to you. Kfui Tova is completely the opposite kind of person. Somebody does good to you. Instead of recognizing, instead of acknowledging, forget paying back, just being kind to the person that was nice to you, you pay back in negative. When this was Pharaoh, the Jews really brought the wealth to the Egyptians. As we know the story with Yosef HaTzadik, they brought the wealth, they made Egypt to become an empire. And instead of having a karatova to the Jews, acknowledge the good that he did to them, on the contrary, Pharaoh paid only with negative and bad. And this is a person that's being a kfui tova, this is what it deserves. And the lesson, the message that we learn from this is that we have to be different than Pharaoh. And this is one beautiful message that we should learn from this Shabbos. When we started to learn about the plagues, the last plague that Hashem gives to Pharaoh, we have to learn that we should not be like Pharaoh. He was kfui tova, and we have to have akarata tov. We have to learn to be the opposite of this person, to acknowledge someone that does good to you. And if anyone does good to you, we have to acknowledge it. Akarata tov. Especially when Hashem is good to us, and much more so, we have to constantly acknowledge and pay back good to Hashem for being good to us. And on this point, I just wanted to share a story about the beauty of Jews being the opposite of Pharaoh, to be Akarata tov, acknowledge good. When the story goes with a great fellow, his name was Rabbi Israel Gustman, if I say his name correct. He was a big Rosh Yeshiva, very learned fellow in the United States of America. He was the Rosh Yeshiva, he was head of a yeshiva, many yeshivot. If I recall right, he was also the Rosh Yeshiva in 770 Eastern Parkway in the Lubavitch Yeshiva. He used to give classes there. They say that the Rebbe would listen sometimes to his classes. He would be behind the wall listening to his classes. But that was his name, Rabbi Soel Gustman, great fellow. Wasn't Chabad, but a great fellow. We have a lot of beautiful, great people in our community. And the story with him was that we have a tradition every day to go out to the garden and water the flowers. Every day that's what he would do, water the flowers. And really do it with, like, meticulous. And even though he was a very busy person in his learning, a very great learner, but he always, every day, gave some time to water those flowers. And everybody was very, very confused with that. Why is so much in these flowers to water the flowers? So he said a story that happened with himself. And it's a beautiful story. And he lived before World War II. And he was a student, he says, of Reb Chaim Oizer. If you heard of Chaim Oizer, he was the Rav of Vilna in Lithuania. Great Jew. He was the pillar of Am Yisrael before World War II. Very close to the previous Rebbe. And he was a student. And he says, one day we went for a walk. The rabbi and the students. And while we went for a walk, we went to a garden. And he showed us different flowers. And he taught us this flower gives energy for this, and this flower gives energy for this. This flower is dangerous. This flower is replacement of meat. This flower is replacement of water. This flower is negative, don't have it, it's gonna ruin you, and so on and so forth. We were very wondering, says, why is it telling us all these details of flower? But we know it was a great man. Rabbi Chaim Oizer was a world-renowned Gadol, as we call him, great Jew. So we were listening. And me too, he says, Rabbi Yisrael, we were listening. After a while, World War II broke out, as we know. And Jews then were the worst danger. And he says, I was in danger too. We all tried to run away for our lives. And me, as many others, we ran into the forest. As we know the stories of the partisans. I ran to the forest. But the worst problem in the forest was, he says, food. And as soon as you need food, you have to go back into a city, and they catch you, and it would be no good. But he says, I knew about flowers taught by my rabbi. And when I was in the forest, I was able to find those flowers that our rabbi, Reb Chaim Oizer, taught us, which is good, which is healthy, which can give me energy. And I lived on these flowers. And then I realized why Reb Chaim Oizer, the great Rav, told me about different flowers, because he saved my life. I didn't have food, but I had those flowers. So I knew what to eat and what not to eat. What is good for me and what's bad for me. And with this flower, I survived the war. And this is where I am today. So he says, this is why I water the flowers every day. I want to have akarat tov. These flowers, they saved my life. And because it saved my life, I have to have akarat tov. I want to thank them. And this is why I keep on watering those flowers all the time. This is a beautiful story to see a great Jew, Rabbi Yisrael, a great Jew. Akarat tov, not to a Jew, not to a human, not to even a livestock. Akarat tov to flowers, because flowers saved his life. Beautiful message. What does it mean? We have to be different than Pharaoh. We have to be people to have akarat tov, to acknowledge and to thank the person or the human, and even a flower that does good to us. And much more so, we constantly have to have akarat tov to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Have yourself a beautiful Shabbos.